Stan, you hit the readers with some pretty critical math during the early part of your book. You point out just how much time the average manager spends at a minimum at the office, commuting, thinking about work. Have you ever had anybody approach you and say that I never realized this was happening to me?
Yeah, either approach me or run shrieking the other way. And it just happens. Work now jumps the fence and follows you home. Most managers I know would rather than take a vacation, they'd rather stay at work and have work take a vacation. And it's one of the reasons to really make sure that work is representative of your personal values and what you've learned about living. Because you're not going to be able to subordinate or compromise personal values over half your waking hours and then turn them on again when you pull into your driveway at the end of another enriching day of meetings. This stuff is going to leak on you. If you're not living your values at work, you're not living them in your life.
Do you think it almost seems as though, because I want to make it clear, you don't suggest at any point in the book, hey, work less. It's almost an acceptance of the fact that this is the nature of what it is to be a professional. So it's your responsibility to make sure that it works for you.
That's right. This Bury My Heart at Conference Room B is not rage against the machine. I'm not anti-business. But in order to serve the business best, managers have to serve themselves first. And that equation has gotten lost somewhere. And it really has nothing to do, if you're a manager, it has nothing to do with your intelligence, maturity, or sophistication. It is a relentless, seductive fog that envelops you as companies try and remove your own sense of self and replace it with a sense of what is important to the company is important to you most. And it's not that that isn't the case, but it's not the only case. What's interesting and what made this book difficult to write is that managers in general are pretty sane and sensible about how they want to live and work, live at work. If I took any couple of managers, and I did this many times, any couple of managers anywhere in the world, put them in a room and talk to them about that. If they didn't exactly say, I'd like to take the best of what my life gives me and bring it to work, they would come pretty close to saying something like that.
Sure.
Take those two managers, though, and put them back into a larger room with a lot of other managers, and some bizarre herd mentality takes over, and managers start legislating against their own best interest. There's no evil brain in a jar behind the curtain. The conditions that managers universally deplore about managing were created, mandated, and are accepted by managers, acting as management, the honor guard of the corporate organism. From the management perspective, allowing managers to live their own values is the stuff of revolution. We can't have that. Because if I set you free to pursue your own priorities, you won't prioritize the company. And actually what Bury My Heart at Conference Room B proves is that's complete fiction. In fact, allowing managers to practice deepest fulfillment at work is what will cause them to protect the place that allows them to do that.
I guess what I get curious about and this is why the book is so engaging for anyone who's in the workplace now, you said about it, it's just something that got lost over time. What was it that changed? Because I know that I've interviewed authors before where they tend to always harken back to show how the workplace has changed. They always go back to the example of IBM. Hugely successful organization, but in the 50s and 60s, at 5 o'clock, the place was empty. Was it just a matter of technology changed and therefore it enabled this culture where people are at work 24 hours a day? What was it that brought the fog in, essentially? What led it to come into the shore and kind of cover everyone?
I think there were a number of things. The baby boomers are the first generation that learned to work and did this insane amount of hours, were intellectually curious, entitled people, and companies adapted to this with greater flexibility in how you work. And so the blending of work life and work environments and home environments changed some. When those when the boomers became the ceiling for the next generation had to work harder in order to be able to move up. I think technology absolutely helped this. The globalization of companies added to this. It's just all in the stew. But what's happened now is that it is almost indistinguishable for many people, especially managers, where work starts and where life starts. And real work-life balance, this is what Bury My Heart at Conference Room B is saying, Real work-life balance, if that's what you want is work-life balance, that's not a matter of escaping from work. That's a matter of living the way you want to, whether you're at work or not at work.
You've had so many sessions of coaching executive teams, and you'd often said that they hold if there's a philosophy there, if you're clawing your way to the top, everything will figure itself out once they get there. But people have this sort of faith in the corporate ladder when, meanwhile, they've seen people, as they're climbing it, falling down and sort of hitting their head on every rung along the way. Why is it that they still maintain this belief in the system? Why haven't they been able to sort of get in touch sooner with the type of values that you're expressing in Bury My Heart?
Well, there's a lot of reinforcement to assume that the company priorities are the values that you should have. The detachment for managers doesn't even happen on the drive to work, is where you think of it. Like, the closer you get to the looming factory, the more you're detached. It's actually more dangerous than that. It's the drive home from work. There is so much reinforcement for you to be a certain way, to identify you and reinforce you for doing a certain thing at work. That isn't there at home. You got to create it for yourself at home. And so many managers are more sure of who they are at work than they are at home. And the point you bring up, that I bring up in the book, is that when you're a young manager or in an early stage of the hierarchy, looking up, you can cling to the illusion that everything will be fulfilled and figured out when you get there. When you get there and find that things still suck, they still don't make any sense, and now you're very often a culture of one, you certainly can't easily admit what doesn't feel good. If anything, the pressure has intensified logarithmically to produce. You have all the apparent rewards of the job, and there's no place else to go. People jump from the top floors in buildings, not the bottom. And so why does that happen? Why, despite continued evidence, do we have cognitive dissonance around this? We want a reason to believe, Andrew, and the company is willing to give it to us.
Stan, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.